I'd like to start today by thanking the host and sponsor of the event, the energy transition company Assystem, for organising today's very, very timely event. And indeed, it was late last year that our Prime Minister Rishi Sunak and the French President Emmanuel Macron pledged ambitious cooperation. I think Emmanuel probably did it with a French accent, so I should give him justice. Ambitious cooperation in the field of nuclear energy to cope with the impact on energy supplies of Russia's absolutely barbaric invasion of Ukraine. So it really is within the spirit of that context and that commitment that this event takes place today. So second, I would also like to extend a special welcome and thank you to the many attendees who have travelled to attend this event from France. As we would say in Welsh, croeso, welcome. But in French, I appreciate you joining today, and I will say bienvenue à tous. So, in short, the aim of today's event is to assess the critical relationship between France and the UK in the drive towards building a new nuclear fleet. Our target is to have 24 gigawatts of energy from nuclear in the UK by 2050. So it's a really bold ambition, and it's been outlined by the government in the British Energy Security Strategy in April last year. And essentially, it was in response to the urgent need for new nuclear here in the UK. Now, nuclear as an energy source, I'm sure no one here needs to be convinced, but nuclear in terms of its stable, its low carbon, baseload energy, and it's absolutely vital if we are to achieve net zero, particularly as we look to decarbonise the transport sector, which is the real holy grail. Now, today's event will focus on panel discussions with our leading nuclear experts from the UK and France, and we will look to assess the critical relationship between the two countries as we work together. And I think it's that spirit of collaboration that we really want to highlight here. And we'll look at the challenge of securing UK engineering capacity and the capability that we need. There's been a lot of events this week that have been all about skills and about apprentices, and I think all of us realise that it's absolutely vital. Not only are we looking down at a top-down approach, we're always looking at a bottom-up approach to make sure that we've got those skills to take advantage of these developments. It will also build on the positive confirmation late last year of the UK government's decision to invest in Sizewell C in Suffolk in partnership with EDF. And Sizewell C is one of Europe's largest projects, and it will capitalise on the French and also the British nuclear expertise and many of the learnings that we've had from Hinkley Point C in Somerset. I understand that a lot of MPs are going to Hinkley C tomorrow, Thursday. And it's a real example, Sizewell C, as to how we can work together to have that decarbonised future. In terms of context, Sizewell C is set to generate clean electricity for 6 million UK homes, and importantly, thousands and thousands of jobs right across the UK today. And I'm sure our panel here will be talking much more about that. So I'd like to introduce our panel for today. I'm sure many of you know Simon Barber, who's the UK Managing Director of Assystem here. Simon. We've got Tilly Spencer, who's the UK Director of Advance, which is a collaboration between EDF and Framatome, and Christian Giono, who's the Senior Vice President, did I say that correctly? The Senior Vice President of Assystem. And we've got Hakim Zamouni, who's Head of Civil Engineer, Civil Nuclear British from the British Embassy in Paris, correct. Brilliant. So I'm going to start with Simon. So Simon, how important is the whole Franco-British collaboration in nuclear, and where would we be in the UK without that important collaboration?
I think, and I always see, and thank you, Virginia, I always see nuclear as being, particularly new build, it has to be an international, global exercise because the projects are so big, the skills are so specialised and in short supply that actually we have to look globally if we are going to deliver. And I think when we look at the EDF projects in the UK, particularly Hinkley Point C and Sizewell C, then for us, it becomes even closer because the ties we have with EDF in France, with Assystem, we are a French company, are really enduring. They go back over 50 years. And actually, when you look at Hinkley Point C and when you look at Sizewell C, today we have over 350 people in France that are supporting the project-specific engineering and design on those projects. In addition, we've got 150 people in the UK that are supporting Tilly's team in advance, are gearing up for commissioning and supporting other areas of the project. So overall, it's a massive cross-channel collaboration to enable the project to be delivered. And for me, what's really important as the UK MD of Assystem is actually how do we take those skills, that expertise, that know-how, not just in the technology and how you deliver it, but in the design processes and all those things. How do we take that and how do we use it to create a sovereign capability in the UK? Because we know France has a new build programme. We know that is going to be really sort of moving into delivery probably in the next 5 to 6 years. So we've got a window of opportunity to transfer those skills to the UK. So that's what's really important for me. It's about that knowledge transfer. It's about people and people mobility. And I think that's the question we'll come back to. And it's about how we build that capability in the UK, not only to support Hinkley Point C and Sizewell C, but then to support the other programmes, whether they're SMR, whether they're decommissioning, whether they're defence in the UK. I think that probably
no, that's great. That's great.
To start with.
As you can hear, we're voting. So I need to disappear, I'm afraid, and I think I've got a very capable assistant. So I do apologise. I'll leave it here, so you can read the questions. Okay. So we're just on that page. Brilliant. All right. I do apologise. No problem.
Thanks, Virginia.
These things do happen in Parliament, so that's okay. So turning to Christian, what can we learn from France's recent drive to build new nuclear capacity?
Well, the decision to relaunch nuclear program does not come to a surprise for us because it was quite obvious that to engage in the energy transition and to increase the capacity to produce low carbon electricity, we need new nuclear power plant. The good news is the decision, and now we have a clear timetable. So we know we would have to build 6. Timetable is fixed, and that's very important for the supply chain, because the countries have to consider that they need to manage the supply chain active on the long term, because the lesson learned, we can say it like that construction of nuclear power plant is much more complex than doing railway station or hospital or stadium. And so it's very important to keep the supply chain active on the long term. So we know we would have 6 and probably 8 after that, so that means 14. Some are talking about 25 if we consider the need to produce hydrogen, green hydrogen. So that maybe drive me a comment that it's very important for the country to give a clear order, timetable, firm program to the supply chain, so the supply chain, they know what they have to do and they know what they are able to invest and get on board of the program. And that's one of the key lessons learned of the recent period. You may have heard that we voted in January in France some law to accelerate the preliminary administrative procedures to get to the permitting, which is the same in the UK. You know well that till now it has been a long way, a long journey to get off the construction. And so, of course, it will help because we urgently need to accelerate the program to deliver quicker some low-carbon electricity in the country. Probably the second lesson learned we can drive from France is we are also, at the same time, we are driving an extension life program. And that means in France, you have a unique, probably an equivalent experience as an operator, maintaining the chosen technology in the UK. And so that could be another area for exchange, for sure, in the future.
So huge ambitions in France, and there's also that really important supply chain piece. Turning to Tilly, what are your thoughts in terms of that French-UK collaboration? How ambitious should it be? How ambitious could it be?
So maybe stating the obvious, no nuclear program, and especially the current nuclear new builds, would go ahead without that. It's a French technology being built in the UK. I was doing some preparation for this panel, and one of the things I was looking at was the percentage of the suppliers that are in, well, geographically, where do they sit? 90% of the suppliers of HPC are in Europe, UK, and Switzerland. roughly 35% are in the UK and 35% are in France, and then the remaining 30 are 20% are in other EU countries and Switzerland, and then others are more global. So you've got already a majority of the suppliers, which are roughly equally split between France and UK as a starting point. And that's really, I mean, one of the learnings from Flamanville initially, and then the other EPRs, and then coming to Hinkley, is that actually to revitalise a supply chain that so it is capable of delivering nuclear takes a lot of time. There are a lot of requirements that the industry, needs to meet that take, there's a real effort, and I would say quite a lot of work to get a supply chain industrially capable of delivering those. And I completely agree with what you're saying, Christian, about the need then, once that skill and knowledge has been developed, to have visibility of a program to ensure that can continue. And then I think the second thing is really just looking at the sheer need that we have. Today, the nuclear industry in the UK employs directly around 65,000 people. If we take what is a very modest growth scenario with assuming just HPC, Sizewell and 8 SMRs, in the next 3 years, that needs to increase by roughly 30%. And we just, and almost half of the current workforce is over 50. So you take that scenario and you say, how can we do that without proper international cooperation, being able to take benefit from the skills and experience that exist in different countries? It's just not going to be achievable. So I think the only way that can work is that you're really able to both share knowledge, move people, learn from each other. So make sure that you have a really robust way of being able to learn from experience. And then being able to have commonality in your supply chain, which means that actually you've got the same expertise, whether that's in France, whether that's in UK, whether that's elsewhere, that is able to really support the nuclear programs with the level of skills and experience that they need to provide and deliver to the right standards.
So not just a growing relationship, but almost a symbiotic relationship between the two countries, given the interdependency. Turning to Hakeem, what are your thoughts and perspectives from France, and you work at the UK embassy out in Paris?
Yeah, first of all, I would like to say, given the global energy security challenges and our net zero ambition, there has never been a more important time to work on civil nuclear. Energy is a common priority, and our economy is largely dependent on access to energy. And I think the Franco-British collaboration is critical because EDF is the only entity that have successfully started a large-scale new build program with Hinkley Point C and in the near future Sizewell C. And I think that HPC and Sizewell C are two good examples. And maybe it would make sense to have the same approach in other fields, such as the EPR2 in France, fusion, decommissioning, and maybe SMR. And I think that most importantly, the UK-France collaboration is critical because it leads to the global mission to tackle climate change. Just to give some numbers, once HPC and Sizewell C will be operational, it will save 18 million tons of CO2 per year. And I think that without the Franco-British collaboration in nuclear, I think that the UK nuclear renaissance wouldn't have started as what we see today.
Okay, going back to Simon, so there's obviously the new build piece, and we've talked a little bit about Hinkley Point C and Sizewell. What about collaboration in the wider sort of nuclear life cycle, so decommissioning, as Hakeem mentioned, potentially even fusion? Are there real strong areas for potential collaboration there?
Indeed, there are, and I think it was always interesting for me working in Assystem because when you look at decommissioning our reactors, there was very much a difference in terms of the technology to say, well, what can we learn from France about graphite core decommissioning, for example, and vice versa. But then you sort of delve a bit deeper and say, well, actually, France has had some graphite reactors, so there is some commonality around the learning. But also around the approaches they're taking in decommissioning. So that's sort of the digital twin type approach, how you go for fast track decommissioning, there's certainly learning there. And equally there's learning from what we've done in the UK. So as a business, the teams we have both in the UK and France actually collaborate quite extensively in terms of what they're doing and how they're doing it. I think when you take that into fusion, we are as a company fairly uniquely placed in fusion. So we are, if you take the ITER project in the south of France, then we are part of both the Architect Engineer Consortium and part of the Construction Management Consortium. So we're able to provide that sort of through through the whole life cycle of taking the plant to, right, here's the keys, go and operate it. We're able to manage that and then able to support it through those operations as well. What we're doing today is actually applying that knowledge. So with our architect engineer partner on ITER, Atkins, we're providing the same early design phase services to the STEP Fusion program for UKAEA. And we're looking to then take that relationship through to the next phases of that particular program. It also means for UKAEA, as we start to formulate how we deliver in the UK a once in a generation fusion program, we can take all that knowledge and insight and, frankly, knowledge of the pitfalls, because ITER is an incredibly complex project. And we can start to build in some of those lessons at the start of STEP to ensure that it is successful as it moves forwards.
Okay, that's brilliant. Thank you. So we've heard a lot this week about resource is so crucial. What about turning to Tilly and perhaps Christian? What about the skills transfer between France and UK? Do we have a sort of window of opportunity now? We've heard from Christian about France's really ambitious drive to build a number of gigawatt scale plants. So that will take up an enormous amount of resource. So does the UK have a window, or will that transfer of skills between the two countries, is that likely to last for some period of time?
Okay. Yeah. So I would say it's a very relevant question, and one that I would say is really at the top of our agenda. I think you're quite right in highlighting the fact that we have got what is a great position to be in from an industry perspective, which is that there has been a realization that nuclear has to be part of the solution for decarbonisation, energy security, long-term sustainability of green electricity and power more generally. And I think clearly, especially within France and the UK, but elsewhere, there's a real drive to develop new nuclear programs. One of our particular kind of challenges has been to say, how do we ensure that across the EDF group and the supply chain, we have got the right skills and the right volume of capability to be able to continue, complete HPC, succeed in the development of Sizewell. There may be other things that come after that, and then have the skills to be able to support those stations in operation, whilst the French have got a huge ambition themselves to renew their nuclear fleet. And we know that all of those programs are hugely skill and resource intensive. And so how do we ensure that within the UK we've got the right capability? And we're talking about collaboration, so the idea is that you never have to do everything on your own, but that you've got the right capability and the skills that you need to really be able to support the UK nuclear program. And so I think it's going to be an ongoing transition. Nevertheless, the need to really make sure that in the coming years, whilst you've got HPC to complete, you've got Sizewell C that now is ramping up, and we're in a great position to be able to prepare for the financial investment decision, financial close. In the coming months, whilst the EPR2 program in France is also in a very positive dynamic, to really make sure that across both countries you've got the capability and the skills you need. So from our perspective, we've embarked upon, with the likes of Assystem and other partners, quite a significant programme of knowledge and skills transfer to make sure that in the UK we've got the right capabilities to support the UK programme. Right. And that really goes through movement of people, so being able to send people to France who can then come back to the UK, having built up knowledge and experience of the French engineering and organisation, but also the other way around, having people. So I would say that that ability for people to be able to move between the two and to go from one to the other and share and bring that experience is really critical. It's a bit more challenging these days, I think, that's fair to say. But I would say it really is an essential, foundation of us being able to grow the skills we need, share the knowledge, and that works both ways.
So, Christian, what about that skills transfer piece? I know a number of Assystem employees come from France, work in the UK every year, often spend a couple of years here, go back to France. Well, how does that benefit, firstly, Assystem, and secondly, the industry?
Yeah, so maybe I will elaborate a bit longer on the skills first, because a few years ago, everybody was adopting that we will relaunch nuclear, so it was not so fancy. Now, decision has been made by both countries, which is quite lucid, and everybody is asking, but are you able to deliver it? And I will bring a clear answer. Of course, we are able to develop the skills and generate the skills to make it. Just as a reminder, our both countries has in the past developed big program at a time where the country were much smaller, probably less easy access to education. And so I don't want to pair the situation of the two countries but 40 years ago, but if we were able to make it both sides at that time, I'm sure there is no doubt we are able to make it. And for my domain as engineering company, I know what I have to do, and I know I'm able to do it, and I will take my responsibility to do it. Once again, we need a program. At Assystem, we made the decision to divert from every activities which were not dedicated to the energy transition, and so we are working on the construction of new capacity, electricity low carbon, on the use of this electricity in transportation and on the industry, or regenerating the grid and the infrastructure. So I know I have to generate a lot of skills. What I have to do is to allocate the resources to the grid, to the extension life of the existing fleet, probably to transportation, driving transportation to electricity or hydrogen. So I have to make some choice. And for that, I need clear program from my customer. But I know I have time. I know how to generate the resources. So what I want to share with you that there is no risk we don't deliver the program. We will not deliver the program due to the skills. Till we know what we have to do. And as Tilly said, the question is for the UK, do we do in-play and then size one and then we stop? Or do we do, and when size one? Just to confirm the date, or do we do two afterwards? And even if it's later, we have to give some visibility to the people. If not, they may have to make a choice between different industry sectors. Now, coming back to the short term, there is a key momentum now because the schedule of Inclay fits between Flamanville or Kyoto, who are mostly finished, and the new generation, the step after, which is Sizewell and EPR2 in France, which will start at the same time, nearly at the same time. And so for us, there is a game to keep on the resource active and learning from Flamanville or Kyoto to Inclay, and then we will split the resources. Some will move to, will go and join a new program. Some will stay locally to support the operator or the owner engineering on the long term at site. And so we are building that game, and we have a clear picture, and we know how to do it. We have started our institute to generate our own skills 2008, so we are ready to do it. We are also welcoming in the Assystem group some companies that are also operating in different sectors that could bring some benchmark. Quite recently in the UK, we have enhanced our capabilities in nuclear safety, in program management, in digital. We'll talk later about digital, but it's a way to help the project to move faster, quicker, and probably less resource consuming. So no real doubt about it. We have a clear program. Thanks to EDF, who has made the strategic choice to invest in the UK many years ago. Now we have to renew the assets and to build new capacities, and it's our role to support EDF, both sides, France and UK, and that's what we are doing.
Hakeem, what trends are you seeing from the French side in terms of that skills and knowledge transfer, and what are the challenges ahead, do you see?
I think that first of all, I think in both countries there is a lack of resources, and an ambitious nuclear program. And I think that considering that you have Flamanville, HPC, so we'll see that are going to be the next EPR, and the next fleet of nuclear reactor will be in front of the EPR2. I think there is like a continuation of the skills transfer in the future. And I think that both countries have also started to open institutes, training to fill the gaps. So the UK have like the National College for Nuclear and the Nuclear Skills Strategy Group. And in France, they have opened the École du Soudage FAIS, which is welding. And just as an anecdote, in France back in 2022, you had the corrosion issue. And France had to call welders from the US through Framatome. So why not having UK people maybe coming to France to fill those gaps?
Yeah, and it's interesting that you've got those two sort of institutes, one in the UK and one in France. How often do they collaborate, or how closely do they collaborate?
Well, that's a good question. I think that with the next UK-France summit coming on the 10th of March, I think this is something that we're trying to achieve. We also, with my counterpart who is here, Pierre-Yves Corradier from the French Embassy, to try to make sure that both entities, work together, because both France and the UK are leading the way in nuclear for the next decades, and I think this is very, very important that both entities collaborate, because when we think about energy security is not just all about building large-scale reactors. It's also about having the diverse skills and tools to enable to build those capacity. So I think it's going to be very, very, very important that both countries collaborate through those institutes, and making sure that the reactors, are building with the right skills.
So we've talked a little bit about the collaboration in terms of skills, resourcing, education. What about other areas such as digital? Would anyone like to take that?
Yeah, it's for me, I guess. Maybe before that, jump back to the question of the education. There is a lot of initiative both sides. Maybe the comment I could make is that not completely at scale. I think what is missing, and as we are in the Parliament, we may ask for, is that both governments could encourage a larger program like a master degree in nuclear, which could train classes up to 200 per year, something like that, because we are not completely working at scale. That means there is a lot of initiative. Each company has this graduate program, the STEM program, to have equal representation of women and men in the program. I know with EDF we are also exchanging on those programs, and we are cross-mentoring those young people. As Tilly said, most of them are still at school, the one who will contribute to the project in the future. But what we are lacking now is kind of initiative at scales that could really help to generate much more people than the word educated people in nuclear than we are doing now. Coming back to digital, I really I do believe that nuclear needs digital. And for my company, I have engaged Assystem into the digital journey starting 2016 for many reasons. First is to be attractive on the long term. No doubt that the young generation, first they were digital, the generation after will be data native, and in their daily life, they work with digital. So I don't see how we will attract them, retain them in nuclear, and make them work efficiency if we offer old way of working. So the way we have launched it in Assystem, our initiative, Engineering Powered by Digital, was to shake really the way we were performing the program and the engineering. So first and key level is attractiveness. The second one is if we benchmark in the other industry sector, digital transformation is really efficient. It happens because it is efficient. It's a way to have a global collaboration. Nuclear power plant is about a few dozen of millions of data. And so it's key also to think about transferring how to automatize a lot of tasks that are very redundant linked to the document or due to the data, and to be much more efficient to help the collaboration. So that's a really key thing. And if you compare to some other sectors, now the new project that will be launched, what we call the digital twin. That means, okay, let's have a digital environment where we can simulate the way, the process design, the way we will build, the way we will operate. And that's we have to bring in nuclear to be more efficient, to go faster to the connection to the grid, because there is the urgency once again with the energy transition. And yeah, that's and add to that about the collaboration. Both countries, and I would say even broader than France and UK, we are all working with the same software mainly, or they are not so different, but there is a kind of common understanding and common choice of software, so common environment, and so that makes it also much easier to collaborate because it's operate a kind of convergence of the process and the practice.
Tilly, any further thoughts on digital? What are you seeing from France that we're starting to adopt in the UK?
Maybe just the only point I'd add, which is perhaps obvious, is the more that things are digitalized and the more that people are working within the same environment, the more you don't have to be in the same place, which is really obvious. But actually, you know, the ability to have one environment of data, one, in our case, model, in which all of the different, you know, suppliers, designers can work at the same time, the easier collaboration is, because it means that you can have, I don't know, design offices in France, design offices in Poland, you know, engineers in the UK, construction contractors on site, all working with and sharing the same view of what's happening. And so it is also in itself a tool to enable greater common working. It, as well as all of the things that you've said, Christian, it also enables much greater flexibility around how and where you work. And therefore it does facilitate the fact that you can then, you know, have the skills, regardless of where they physically and geographically sit, working towards projects that can be located anywhere.
Okay. Before I'm going to open up for questions to the floor in a moment. So just prepare your questions. But did you want to go in just quickly?
Just maybe a last argument for moving to digital or switching to digital. It's consider we have a fleet to build, so it's not only one. So we have to recopy, and digital. There is nothing more efficient to make a recopy than to use the digital. And also there is a second effect is if you build one, it's a construction world. That means you operate like if you build a stadium or a hospital. That means you give the operating way is coming from construction. If you start to consider 6, 10 large power unit and probably a dozen of small SMR, then you move from the construction to the manufacturing industrial world, because you prefabricate and so you can have automation in the processing. And if you consider the benchmark in the industry, aerospace, automotive, anything else, it's fully digital. That means also if we want to attract the supply chain, not the construction company, but the industrial manufacturer, they already work for digital. The digital transformation in automotive or aerospace, it was 20 years ago. And they will not go back. And it's also linked to the fleet effect, and it will be much more important when we will talk about SMR, for sure.
Okay, I'm just going to ask one more question around regulation. How important is regulatory alignment? Maybe I'll turn to Simon for a UK perspective, and then Hakim with the French perspective.
For me, if you look at the French and the UK regulatory systems, and they are quite different actually. So In that sense, I think regulatory alignment is important. I think when we are looking at people mobility and we are looking at design, then having an understanding of what's different and why is really important, because actually, if you went to build the same product in France and UK, the outcome would be very, very different. But more importantly, the process you went through to get to the outcome is very, very different indeed. So it's important we just understand those differences. I like the fact that regulators globally are talking about how they can take credit in other countries for regulatory effort and input that's happened in another country. But it does come back to, we are a very different regulatory environment, and not just in the acceptance of the design, but then when you take that into the operator and how the operator takes on board that design and accepts it as being safe to operate within that regulatory that framework, again, it delivers differences between the two.
Maybe just to add one thing, and I caveat this for saying it's really not my domain. However, I think if we're thinking about SMRs, where the idea is that you have a modularizable product and that you can build that not just within one country, if there is no alignment of the regulatory regimes, the risk is that you have something that you thought, you design it, you build it, you repeat it however many times, that starts to become really, really difficult. So the need to have something that is licensable in multiple countries will likely be a really important part of the business model of SMR developers, which is why I said it's not my domain, and therefore the need to have a level of alignment. So, you can say it's been licensed in France, the UK, and I don't know, America, and actually that means that the changes that you'll be making when you go to different countries are not because of full examination of your product, but just adaptations to accommodate certain, specifics of that country or that site. So I think there's a step that needs to happen if we really want to look at how you can industrialize technologies beyond the boundaries of a country or a couple of countries. Maybe yeah.
Hakeem, any thoughts on regulation? And you also have the added curveball of SMRs.
Yeah, so it is important to have a better harmonized, I think, regulatory framework when it comes to nuclear, especially with the multiple SMR across the landscape. And a more, I think, comprehensive, regulatory framework should ease, I think, the transfer of skills, technology, but also commercial opportunities. And I think that related also to digital, I think this is very important that that France and the UK are worldwide tech hubs. And I think that when it comes to artificial intelligence, cybersecurity, cooperation in those fields applied also in the nuclear field.
Okay, I'm going to open up to questions from the floor. So if you'd like to ask a question to our panelists, please raise your hand. It'd be great if you could identify yourself, of course, and your organisation. Any questions?
I actually have a question. Probably more for Hakeem. What outcome, if any, would you hope to see from the forthcoming Franco-British summit in March?
Well, I hope that we'll have a lot of outcomes, first of all, and I think that one of the outcomes is really to see how we can collaborate above the EPR. Of course, as I mentioned, cooperation is great with the Hinkley Point C and Saswell C. There are also different joint ventures like Bouygues and Lenk O'Rourke with Byler, also with Cavendish, Bocard, the MEH alliance with Altrad and British companies. But I think that we need to see the same approach in other fields, as I mentioned with the EPR2. I'm hoping that when we build the Franco-British supply chain for the HPC and Saswell C, we will be able to have UK companies to win, I would say, export wins or export into the French markets. And also in terms of fusion as well, because not to forget, there is like ITER project, but also the STEP, and also in terms of decommissioning. I hope that we can strengthen this collaboration, especially on the graphite as well, because I believe that we are stronger, I would say, together. So I think that we can export our knowledge for the UNGG in France, but also for the AGR in the UK, and also to try to transfer into third markets. And as I very often say, quoting from Henry Ford, I say, starting together is a beginning, staying together is progress, and working together is success. And this is exactly what we want to achieve in the Franco-British relationship.
Any further questions?
I think just if I could just add to the question, I think from my perspective, I think we look at Hinckley, we look at Sizewell, and they're obviously one is in construction, the other is just about to start, but we've got a number of other very, very good sites in the UK. So Virginia's constituency of Wilver, Moorside, and indeed other sites in the UK. There's a real question mark over how and what time frame those sites get developed. So I think there's an opportunity there to look and say, well, will there be further EPR projects beyond Sizewell? Because Assystem, we are a people company. We employ people. The people are our main commodity, if you like. That's not too sort of denigrated a word. Assets, that's the word. Yeah, valuable assets. Yeah. People are valuable assets, and we've already talked about the importance of that skills mobility piece. And post Brexit, it is a real and a genuine challenge to, firstly, to bring people from France to the UK and vice versa, but secondly, to do it at pace and with an agility, because you can identify a need, you can start the process. And the process says today that we have to advertise and prove that we can't recruit that role in the UK, that then enables us to go internationally. So what would normally be a very quick process to do that is now 6 months plus. So for me, an international agreement which enables us to have that agility to move people and to do it flexibly and for the right reasons and within a framework, I think is really, really important.
Any further thoughts?
I agree wholeheartedly with what Simon says.
Very good.
Especially at the end of the project, when you are in the finishing phase of the project, because then you move to a civil site to a nuclear site, and so it might be even much more difficult. So we have to anticipate.
Great. I think we had one question here. If you could identify yourself.
Yes, Lincoln Hill from the Director of Policy for the Nuclear Industry Association here in the UK, of course. On the question actually about graphite, do you see that as an opportunity with the AGRs in the last sort of 5 years of life here in the UK, or are you thinking forward about high temperature reactors that still use graphite as the moderator? And if so, is that what kind of markets would you be looking at for the value of that shared expertise?
Shall I start?
All right, please go ahead.
Well, I think firstly through EDF UK and predecessor companies in the UK, we've got the world-leading expertise in operating, maintaining, and qualifying the life of graphite reactors. So that is unparalleled anywhere. So I think for me that puts us in really good stead for the UK to be right at the forefront of developing high-temperature gas reactors, and then looking at what applications they might play within a 2050 and beyond energy mix, where we've completely decarbonised. We have different energy vectors within the system. So that knowledge is here in the UK, both from an operation experience point of view, but also from an R&D and a modelling point of view, how graphite behaves.
And just to add, I mean, you said it all, but I think I see a really great opportunity to have to build like a Franco-British supply chain on those graphite and export into third markets, because there are many also graphite reactors to be decommissioned.
Okay, any further questions? I'm just going to round off now because I anticipate that you'll all want a glass of champagne or a cup of tea after a long day, Nuclear Week in Parliament. But quick question to each of the panellists in order. How deep and potentially positive can this Franco-UK collaboration be? Simon.
I feel like I sort of say very, very. But I just think the history of working together in nuclear goes back an incredibly long way. But actually, when you look at what's ahead of us, it's just another scale and then beyond. So that collaboration becomes increasingly important for the benefits of both countries' programmes.
I'm trying to think of something original to add to Simon's comment. I suppose I'd finish with what I started saying, which is that I think the idea that we can do these types of quite complex programs in isolation or with kind of minimum support and sharing of skills and knowledge is just not realistic. And so I would say it's essential, really. And we've been talking about Franco-British, but there's obviously lots of capability and industrial capability elsewhere, and it's really important that we're open, to making sure we're really benefiting from that, and that also includes getting experience from other industries as well.
Christian?
I will answer two ways. First, for the young generation, they don't consider, well, from the French side, they want to come to the UK and they will ask for mobility between two sites in France. That means you have to consider that for the new generation, there is no barrier for the geography, absolutely no barrier for the language, which probably was not the case 40 years ago. The bean sauce is something over. Their grandparents were talking about it, but the experience now is completely different. So we have to consider it because we have also to bring them an answer. They joined the nuclear program, and they want to take part to the different programs. And in Assystem, I can tell you the graduates, they want to go to Paris. They want to. We have 11 of the STEM graduates last time in WNE, the World Nuclear Exhibit in Paris. They stayed 2 weeks and they were very happy. And they don't ask the question. They don't consider the questions through the same angle as we may do. So we have to think about it. The second point for my company is very clear. I said earlier, EDF has made a strategic choice to invest in the UK many years ago. So now it's time to renew the asset, and it's our role and responsibility to support them both sides. So there is it's quite obvious that we have to let's say enhance collaboration, exchange, and exchanging training program, exchanging the experience. That's come as an evidence for us, for sure.
It's very simple. I think, as I mentioned previously, given the global energy security challenges and our net zero ambition, I think that the UK-France collaboration would be even vital, not even important, like very vital. And I think that having the UK-France summit on the 10th of March in France will hopefully, increase our relation, especially in civil nuclear.
Thank you. So I'd like to formally end this panel session by thanking Simon, Tilly, Christian, Hakeem, and also Virginia for her support because she sponsored today's event, and also the NIA for putting on this fantastic week. So if you could extend a warm round of applause, that would be much appreciated.